Hey, welcome back to The Dive. Today on the show, we have one of our favorite guests, Todd Bubba Horwitz from BubbaTrading.com. He's here today to share his thoughts on the Fed's recent rate hike, the bank situation, China and Russia's relationship, meme stocks, a commodity supercycle, oil, gold, and be sure to stick around to the end to hear Bubba's tips for investors during these tough times. Hey, Bubba, welcome back to The Dive. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Always great to be with you, Cassandra. Always look forward to it.
Me too. Okay, so Bubba, the Fed just announced another 25 basis point rate hike amid the bank crisis. Do you think that this path makes sense in this environment, and where do you think we go from here?
Well, I don't think any of what the Fed does makes sense in general. I think no Fed has ever hiked rates into a recession. I agree that rates need to be higher, but they should stay out of the way and let the natural price discovery of rates happen, and they would get there faster without causing so much turmoil in the market. I think they're going to continue to hike. I think we're going to see a 6% 10-year notes before the year is out.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the bank situation. We've had the sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, Credit Suisse being taken over by UBS, and we have First Republic Bank shares sinking to a record low. Do you think policymakers will be able to contain the situation?
No, I don't. I think this is, if you think it's only those three banks that are in trouble, as I've said to you many times before, I think that, the banks are not audited properly. The fractional banking system, they're all well over leveraged, which is going to create another banking crisis. And they can do that because, of course, they have the taxpayers to bail them out once again, which I think is going to be the case before this is all said and done.
Okay, so let's shift gears here. President Biden issued the first veto of his presidency this week, rejecting a legislation to bar investment managers from incorporating climate and social considerations in their investment decisions. What are your thoughts on ESG investing?
Well, I think that to restrict big funds from what they want to invest into what can make their clients money is stupid in the first place. Again, I think we're making far too much out of this climate change, this whole environment. Do you want to destroy an entire population because you think that you have a potential climate change, which in reality is really just a natural cycle of evolution? I think that this is absolutely silly that they would even try to have people invest in what they want them to invest to, but of course it is part of the grander scheme of busting out a society. And I think this is just, the veto was right, is not to restrict, because at the end of the day, people are investing for the retirement, for their future. And you've already destroyed a lot of our futures with the Federal Reserve and allowing them to continue to devalue currency in general. But you want to take away more now, so I think it's good.
Okay. China's President Jin Ping called for peace talks and responsible dialogue over Ukraine in a joint statement with Vladimir Putin. We have to ask, should this visit worry the West?
I think the West should be worried. I think that, the closer that Russia and China get close to each other, you've got, you have potential world power there. And you already have, all of the rhetoric and things that we've been doling out, which has all been wrong to what's going on there. And of course, the Russia-Ukraine war now is not about a war, it's about money. And it's about the money that is being made because we keep shifting over cash, to them. And of course, we know that there's a lot of background into lobbyists, into who gets the money before it's all said and done. So I think there's a lot to be concerned about over there.
Okay, now let's talk about GameStop. Its stock jumped nearly 40% after announcing an unexpected profit in Q4. Do you think meme stocks can still catch fire in this environment?
Yeah, listen, when you're in a wild environment of very thin traded markets, you get these wild stocks that are overly shorted. And of course, that's what really creates the action, is the short squeeze that comes along with it. And I think that can create and can continue to happen. GameStop has no chance to go anywhere. The stock is worthless, but yet we've seen it as high as $600 or $700 a share because you get these monster short squeezes and you get the momentum periods trading it up. But from a fundamental standpoint, the company has no value.
Goldman Sachs expects a commodity supercycle driven by China and the capital flight from energy markets. Do you think that we're nearing a commodity supercycle that many of the industry leaders are calling for?
I do think so. I've said for quite a while that I think we're going to see some big markets here, and it's interesting how they continue to keep the weight on top of these markets without allowing them to go higher. But I do think you're going to see a huge market. First of all, I think a lot of the money that will come out of equities will go into the commodity space, and I think you're going to see some shortages along the line as well, because what you are is you're now pricing out a lot of the farmers, a lot of people that produce these things out of markets, which should create some shortages as well.
Okay, now let's move on and talk about oil. Its price had fallen below $70 per barrel today. What is your read on the oil market right now?
Well, it's certainly pointing out that the economy is not very strong. Okay, that's a problem. I think that Saudi Arabia is also in the midst of flooding kind of the markets into a bad economy because, again, why not sell what they have? I believe that you'll see come the end of April, early May, that suddenly there'll be a shortage of oil and oil will take off again because, of course, it'll be driving season and demand season. And but it really shows that the economy isn't that good, so the consumption is down because there's not a lot of people not working.
Now, gold prices briefly touched past $2,000 an ounce for the first time in a year. What is your read on the recent price action in gold?
Well, I think gold's going to make no highs this year. I mean, I think this has been, my theme all along. And I think that, you'll see, I don't like to make massive predictions, but I wouldn't be surprised to see 2,200 this year in gold. I wouldn't be surprised to see $35 in silver. I think that, again, there's a demand for metals. And of course, in one of your states, Texas, they're voting now to use gold and silver as a currency.
Okay, so Bubba, we saw your most recent daily video update, and you said that the markets are brutal to trade right now. What is your advice for investors or traders watching, and how would they navigate these tough times?
Well, if you're an investor, you should turn off your iPhone and your computer and just let your investment work. You got to invest in good, solid companies that you feel are going to be in business for the next 20 years. As traders, you just have to be very patient and look to pick your spots. When you get a market that is basically, the equity markets have basically been in consolidation for about 16 months. Very tough pattern to trade from a retail standpoint when you're trading off of a screen when you can't get an edge on the markets. You have to look to pick spots and make trades and make sure that if you're going to enter a trade, where you're getting out. So in other words, have your exit plan before you enter.
Okay, great. Well, that's all we have for you today, Bubba. Thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always.
Cassandra, thanks as always. I appreciate it. Great to be on the dive.
Thank you all so much for tuning in today. We will be back again tomorrow with another interview. So if you like this kind of thing, be sure to stay tuned by hitting that notification bell and subscribing below. Bye.